hello. Nice to have you here. I was waiting for a little while. I hope it wasn't too hard to find this place. It is a little secluded, isn't it? I hope my directions weren't too confusing. I'm not the best with them, but I'm glad to have you here. I have a few plans, and I wanted to remind you of them for what we're planning to do today. First off, I haven't been down to Earth much. It is very loud. Normally in space there's no noise whatsoever, except on my ship, where most you hear is a little clang here and there, maybe something that's going wrong or maybe something I need to fix. But the animals and everything here, it's a lot of noise, at least for me. But if this is calming to you, then that's all we need. I wanted to find a relatively spooky place. Sort of, well, spooky. Secluded. Secluded enough for a campfire. Secluded enough to be comfortable. Because I found a few stories. Something which you humans like to call creepypasta. It is not entirely unknown to me what it is because I've been looking into it a little bit. Also, the name creepypasta. How did people come up with it? I know what pasta is, I know what creepy is, but why did they choose it for spooky stories specifically? I wonder. But basically, I have some stories I want to tell. There's a few I found, and I found them very interesting. The first story I want to start with is the alien, and that's me. But before I start, I do wanna do one more thing. Because I know this is a nice atmosphere and everything in and of itself, but I thought, why don't we share some earbuds? I brought some music with me, so we can share a pair of headphones. But the reason we're sharing headphones instead of me just playing the music on like whatever phone device people have is because I don't want to disturb the tube beasts, as they call it. So let me get you your headphones real quickly. I'll go. Oh, one moment. Headphones aren't plugging in. There you go. Here's your headphones. That should work. So now we have a little bit of music while we read some stories. I have my book near me, if you can hear it. It has a little bit of that old book smell. Oh, I gotta get used to the book smell because I'm gonna be reading these stories for a little while. Right, so we have our music, everything is good, and we can start. Our first story, hold on, is the alien. The following passage is taken from a notebook from Officer Miles Bradbury. 17th of April, 2019. Hold on one moment. I needed to flip to the right page. There we go. 17th of April, 2013. We were called out to investigate a forest fire. Of course, when we got there, we saw government agents who merely told us to secure a perimeter and gave us fake details to sprout anybody who tried to come close. My close colleague Jake and I were a little annoyed by this. We passed the tedious hours of chatting. It didn't take long for the government agents to come up during conversation. What do you think they're doing back there? I asked. Weapon testing, I bet. I doubt that it's weapon testing. It would count for the smoke, but why do that in the middle of a forest? Why not a moor, or out at sea, or somewhere safe? Ah, you're right. Weapon testing doesn't really make sense. I might go have a look. If they'll let you. My friend was silent after that. I wish I had known what was going on inside his head. Might have tried to stop him if I had. The next day, he wasn't at his post, so I stood alone for the entire morning shift. During my lunch break, he approached me. He was different. It wasn't just the fact that his clothes and his face were dirty and covered in some sort of slime. It wasn't just how exhausted he was, or even that he was shaking. It was the look in his eyes. Never seen anything like it. The only way I could describe it, there was a madness to his eyes, frantic desperation to do something, constantly at war with an intense, deliberating fear of actually doing it. Between the crazed gasps, he uttered the words, "It's an alien." I'd have laughed if it weren't for his appearance. This was no laughing matter. What? I started. You mean like the little grey men? He shook his head. No, not like that. These were bigger. Not size, but it was just something greater than us. More powerful. We are ants compared to it. Humanity is nothing. We're nothing. He started to laugh, cry, and shake. I backed away uneasily. The next moments I'll never forget. He grabbed my arm. He grabbed my porcelain mug from the table, poured the contents onto the floor, shattered it against the table, and rammed the jagged remains into his own throat. I rushed forward and tried to stop him, but it was too late. He was bleeding profusely. He gripped on hold of my hand so tight that it hurt, and didn't let go until he had finished choking to death on his own blood. I didn't move for the next 20 minutes. Even then the others found us. I was under suspicion for his death. Of course I was. The government types, they saw slime on his clothing. They were even more eager to convict me. I was determined to get to the bottom of this. I didn't think I could sleep again until I had. They took me to a spare room and kept a guard posted, with orders not to let me so much as move. Of course, he told me in confidence that he didn't believe I was guilty. I desperately took advantage of this. When enough time had passed, he began to grow complacent. I got up and I beat him unconscious. Or I killed him. Not sure. I didn't even stop to think about it long enough to feel any kind of guilt or remorse. I had to get to the smoke, no matter what. After several minutes of tracking, I started to feel vulnerable, and not just by the possibility of getting caught by my fellow officers or the government. It felt as if a million eyes were staring at me with killing intent. It felt like every molecule of air around me was a predator so dangerous that it preyed on humans. My dead colleague's words came back to me. Literally felt like an ant staring up at a human's boot. Feeling only grew stronger the closer I got to the smoke. My chest was aching, my spine was tingling, my forehead was burning. Symptoms of anxiety were so severe I felt like I was walking through a desert. I had to breathe slowly and deeply to calm myself down, but it still wasn't enough. Every step I took was a great effort. In through the nose, out through the mouth, one foot in front of the other. Finally made it to the clearing and saw what was causing the smoke. When you see a UFO on TV, they look like discs, or triangles, or flashing lights. All things you've seen before. What was in front of me, I knew, was without a doubt a UFO, even though I've never seen anything quite like it. It was a craft such as one that humanity would never be capable of making. I had little knowledge in science, but I knew that this craft was capable of traveling past the speed of light. Just looking at it, I realized that everything we think about physics is wrong. I couldn't go any further. I turned back into the forest and sat down. That's when I wrote this. I wanted to uncover why my friend died. Now, if any of you government people see this notebook, keep it to yourselves. I don't want anyone else reading this. I don't want the truth getting out. Humanity is not ready for this, and they will never be. After I've written this, and once I've gathered my courage, I'm going to look inside the UFO. The following passage is taken from the notes of Dr. Osman. 9th of July 2013. Miles Bradbury isn't too strange a case. He constantly harps on about seeing an alien. It's when he goes into the detail that things start to get interesting. Of course, most of the time he just blabbers and stammers for his entire interview. But when he talks about the alien, he describes it as a beautiful being. Perfect, gigantic, but not in size, and such other praises. He says that it is a higher form of life than humanity and could destroy us all with very little effort, if required. In fact, during a few interviews, he stops and immediately starts screaming, "Humanity is nothing!" I don't want to actually scream. It's a calm stream. Over and over, at the top of his lungs, until we sedate him. He shows no sign of brain damage or physical trauma, no history of episodes or disorders. This was all caused by some kind of physiological trauma the night before he was brought in, after killing 2 of his fellow officers. This patient had very little chance of recovery. It's troubling. There's seemingly no cause for this condition. I literally cannot think of a single reason on this earth that a man could snap this violently. That was The Alien, story number 1, written by Cyan Brights. I personally really like this one. It's on the shorter side, but it's like spooky enough. Just like, what is in the UFO? Why do people go mad? It makes you wonder, what do the aliens look like? Or what exactly they saw? I mean, I would know, I'm an alien myself, but will I tell you? No. I already know that physics don't work as humans think they do, but I don't think everyone here is ready for that, so I'm keeping this info to myself. The next story I don't think I've read before. The Alien, I've done a little bit of proofreading because I was really curious myself on how the story came out to be. I do want to give one honorable mention of a creepypasta I saw. A poem called Tomino's Hell. You know, originally I was going to read this because I thought it was interesting. But the reason this is an honorable mention, and I'm not saying this out loud, is because the story spooked me too much. It literally says... Wait, it specifically says, don't read the story aloud. I can say the description of it, it's fine, but if I read the actual poem, you know, I may be an all-powerful alien, but I don't want to tempt fate. So I'll grab up the description for... I can read it, because it is interesting. It spooked me enough that I didn't want to say it. So I'll get you the description. Domino's Hell. This is a popular Japanese story. It is about a poem called Domino's Hell. They say that you should read it with only your mind and never out loud. This is why. If you were to read it out loud, then you must take responsibility for your actions. Domino's Hell is written by Yumota Inuke in a book called The Heart is Like a Rolling Stone, and was included in Saijo Yasho's 27th collection of poems in 1919. It's not sure how this rumor started, but there is a warning that if you read this poem out loud, tragic things will happen. It just looks like a curse. It asks not to compare this with the common "you'll grow taller" or even "my parents died." Do you get a sense of how dangerous this is? This story used to be very popular in Tuch. I don't know what the sh stands for. There were many people talking about pictures and videos as proof and posting them on Tuch. There were many users where nothing happened. There were also many posts that didn't have the user come back to post the results. I think it's scarier that someone posting that someone else got sick, or someone else passed away. But if it were to be read out loud, it's better to read it in Japanese rather than in the translation. Also, I feel like the description is kind of translated in and of itself because it reads kind of weird. The actual poem I am not going to read. You can look it up yourself, it's fine. I don't want to tempt fate. I am but an alien, I'm a powerful alien, but I don't wanna get myself into trouble, you know? Oh, the next story. One I have lined up. This is one I hate personally. An itch you can't scratch. Just the name alone, it implies something is under your skin and you can't quite get to it. Before I start this, I'm gonna take a sip of a drink I have. Yeah. It's still hot. Nicely kept warm by the campfire. I personally hate this story because I've had many nightmares of things under my skin, so this one is gonna freak me out as well. I haven't fully read it through, but I skimmed over it and I hate it. Alright. An itch you can't scratch. It all started after we got back from a family trip around Eastern Europe. We have family in some of the countries, but my mother and father really love the history and architects of the religion. Everything went normal during the trip. We ate good food, saw cool sights, and spent time with distant relatives. I acted like I wanted to go home the whole time. Truth be told, I had fun. My younger sister turned 14 on the trip. We had a big party for her. she was really into makeup and stuff. So my parents got her a bunch of foreign brands that are popular, I guess. As far as I know, I only started once we got back home. It only started when I got back home. Oh, my alien tongue is betraying me. I'm not used to human speech yet. My sister started complaining about an itch. She said there was a weird tickling sensation constantly on her back. She'd always ask anyone, and I mean anyone, even strangers around her, to scratch it for her. She was never satisfied. Just reading that makes me want to itch my back. It was as though we couldn't get the right spot. It seemed very frustrating for her. My mother thought it may be a rash or an adverse reaction to some of the products she got for her birthday. She saw the doctor, who said there was no sign of any problem with the skin, aside from irritation where she'd obviously been trying to scratch it herself with various objects. She went to see a specialist. First a dermatologist, then an immunologist, even naturopaths. My sister and the rest of us at that point were getting desperate. 2 months after we returned, it went from an itch to an obsession. She was always scratching all over her body. She said she could feel it tickle underneath the skin, as if thousands of bugs were crawling around in her insides, as she would put it. The closest thing we got to an answer was from a neurologist. He said that there could be problems with her nerves backfiring like crazy. He told us that there were certain medications she could be put on, but they'd have serious adverse effects. My parents were understandably hesitant, but she was in agony. We all agreed as a family there was no other option. I watched her getting worse with every day. The medication barely helped, and it left her in a severe mental fog. She had a hard time communicating and paying attention. The only thing she could do properly was scratch her skin. As her brother, watching her go through this was heartbreaking. I was helpless. I was supposed to look out for her, defend her, care for her. I was at my wit's end, trying to think of what the hell I could do. But even if the doctors have no idea, how the hell would I know? She stopped taking medication. She said it was giving her uncomfortable side effects. She could hear the itching. She said it was better to deal with the irritating sensation rather than disquieting hallucinations. We all understood. We wanted it to be as much as her choice as possible with how to handle things. It was winter at this point. She'd been going for counseling therapy. My father believed there was some kind of psychological thing. A psychologist would be able to help her deconstruct the root of the issue. It's a good thing too, because if the psychologist hadn't noticed, I don't know if any of us would have. She'd been wearing heavy clothing all the time. We assumed it was due to the cold. As it turned out, her body was covered in lacerations. She'd been slowly trying to skin herself. She explained to my parents when the psychologist, oh god no, my tongue, no, okay, let me get some drink. Sorry for the immersion break. She explained to my parents when a psychologist told them, "You don't understand, whatever it is, it's inside of me, I have to let it out." My parents were mortified. I was too, but I couldn't help but wonder how she was able to hide it from us as well. I shared a bathroom with her, and I never found traces of blood that couldn't be easily explained away. In the hospital, she was manic, screaming and flailing, refusing to hold still, to let the nurse bandage her. "It's just going to keep it in," she howled, desperately trying to rip through her clothing, to tear at her flesh. It was more than my parents could handle. She was sent to an institution, where they could keep an eye around her all around the clock. She'd have no access to tools with which to harm herself, and she was forced to wear clothing that inhibited her from scratching. That was a week ago. Today, we heard from the hospital. She's dead. The doctor said they weren't entirely sure how it happened, but at some point, when she and some other patients were taking a walk, she meant to impale herself on a fence post through the throat. My mother hasn't spoken a word since we heard the news. My father is furious. He demands to know how this could have happened, especially when it's supposed to be a secure facility. Me? I'm torn. As I sit here writing this, I'm devastated from the loss of my dear sister. But I'm distracted. I'm terrified, and I have no idea what to do now. I haven't told anyone, especially not to my family, but something has happened. A few days ago, I felt an itch. An itch I just can't scratch. I'm gonna scratch every skin of my body. I hate this story so much. I felt my back like itching while I was reading it. This story is written by Tehawai? I'm trying my best. If you know what this story made me think of, if you know the game Grow Your Grandpa, I think it was called. One of the endings of the game, I don't want to spoil it, but it does have something to do with something being under your skin. And the visual of that game combined with this story, nightmare fuel. I don't know what. I'm scratching my hand. I'm gonna drink my tea. There we go. Next one, I think... I don't know if it was a bit of a long story, but... The Eyes of the Watcher. Also something that, by title, I feel like relates to me. Because if you can see, the stripes on my face are eyes. I have more than just two. I'm not gonna open them because I don't want to open them in front of another human being. Just for safety reasons. Alright, let's get to the eyes of the Watcher. Here we go. Eyes of the Watcher. Deep within the forest lays a presence. I haven't read this one either. This one is also very new to me. Also, I've never heard of it before, so let's experience it together, shall we? 3:30 p.m. October 3rd, 1999. How long is this trail? The man at Jim's weary voice, exhausted from the 80-mile hike. Not much longer, lad. Oh no. Well, I'm in the middle of a story at the moment, but if your onion soup failed, I'm sure you can try again. There's a campfire right here. We are in the forest, so if you need some ingredients, you can go around, look here and there, grab some new things, and cook while I explain some stories. Right now, we just started The Eyes of the Watcher. Let's continue. I'll go back from day one. Day one? Yeah. 3:30 p.m., October 3rd, 1999. How long is this trail? Demanded Jim's weird voice, exhausted from the 80-mile hike. Not much longer, lad. Norman had a deep, booming voice with a subtle hint of a Scottish accent. He was our guide through the 80,000 acres of land that is the Helborean forest. Me and my friend Jim Benwill had been camping together in the forest and had decided to take a break from our solo and guide to show us interesting features of the forest. My voice is getting tired. I think you can hear it. Hold on. Want some more tea? Alright. Yeah. It's kind of cold outside, but luckily the campfire keeps us warm. Alright. I looked around at the vast expanse of green all around us. It would be easy to get lost out here, I stated cheerfully, as if it was a piece of sheet knowledge. We continued to walk on without a worry in the world. The forest was strangely quiet, and the birds had stopped chirping. I could actually hear my own heartbeat, only interrupted by the gentle sound of boots clumping on dirt. We were near a bunch of boulders that had moss grow on them. I first took it as nothing, but I noticed something shiny near one of them. A golden necklace with a photo of two children, a boy and a girl. It could not have been more than 8 or 9, but the face of the boy was ripped out of the photo. I thought that it must have belonged to someone and took it, so I could return it to the administration and they could see who it belonged to. 6:30 p.m., October 3rd, 1999. I took a swig from my bottle as we sat at the rest site. It was peaceful, and there was only the rustling of some leaves behind us, the occasional crack of a branch. Our guide decided to tell us an urban legend about a family that came here. Apparently the father went insane and killed his wife, cutting her up and burying parts of her body all over the forest. The mother managed to get the children to run away at the expense of her own life. The kids had a father. The kids... Alien tongue is not helping me with this. The kids had and father had never been heard from since. But it's rumored that the boy, in a savage act of self-defense, smashed his father's head in with a rock. The rustling continued. It was most likely a rabbit or something equally small and furry. After a few minutes of rest, in the little chill of the legend Norman told us, we continued on. It felt like I was being watched, but there was absolutely nothing around. I shook as a chill ran down my spine, took another swig from my bottle. The sun was only now poking out of the horizon, which was normal around this time of year in Canada. The forest was now turning to an eerie shade of grey, and the sky was a dark orange. Hey, orange, that's me. As we traveled up a small hill, I noticed something peculiar. There was a rustling sound behind us, identical to the one we heard earlier. Our guide tour obviously heard it too. He told us we should pick up the pace and get back to base camp. 7 p.m. October 3rd, 1999. Once we got back to the cabin, I decided to use my computer to check Facebook and my email. Decidedly, my laptop was not getting the best connection in the middle of nowhere, but it was something. When my laptop fired up, however, I noticed something unearthly creepy. There was a file on my desktop called eyes.exe. I have no idea how it got on my computer. Someone must have tampered with it. As strange as I found this, my curiosity got the better of me, and I booted it up. After a bit of loading, my screen went black momentarily and then began to play a video. It was completely silent except for slight static, and nothing could be made out except for the sky due to the pitch black darkness. I looked out of the glass screen windows and noticed that it looked eerily like what was portrayed on my laptop. It could have been filmed yesterday, I thought to myself. I noticed something strange. Some lights were beginning to emerge in the video, and they were quickly approaching the camera. I squinted a bit and realized that the lights were in fact coming from the windows of a house or a cabin. I looked outside again. The sound of rustling was getting closer, closer, nearer and nearer to the cabin. A lump developed in my throat. This must be some kind of practical joke that the staff are putting on us. Suddenly, the rustling stops. And I look at the computer. I could clearly see myself sitting at the computer as the thing stared at me. I looked out my window at where it could have been, but it was gone. I look back at the computer. I see myself looking down at my own back. I jerked my head back, and it was right behind me. Dear God, was it awful. Looked like a normal boy, but he wasn't wearing a mask. No, it was a human face tied around his head. He stood there, unmoving. His head slowly began to tilt to the side. It kept going and going until it was leaning what should have been beyond possible. Paralyzed with fear, and all that I could do was stare at the boy. Then I realized it was most likely the boy from the picture and the legend. That was impossible. He was wearing the same clothes, if not ripped and dirty. He slowly limped towards me. As the floorboards creaked, my pulse quickened. He lumbered up to me and yanked my hand towards him with superhuman strength. He took out a small knife and drew a triangle into my palm. It was surprisingly painful, and the blood in my hand was dripping everywhere. I winced in pain, but when I opened my eyes, the boy and the blood were gone. I glanced around and locked my cabin door. I took a seat at my computer, still shaking violently. The program was closed. I tried opening it again, but simply met with an error message, followed by a bit of long binary code. Now, there's a bunch of numbers here. I do have it translated, but I'll say what the translation is later on. It's a lot of numbers. I have no idea what it means, but ever since that fateful night, the presence has been following me for 14 years. Been lurking out the corner of my eye. I swear I've seen it in my home. Wherever I go, it's there. And it has ruined my life. I'm writing this to tell the story to anyone who might listen, and to avoid repeating the curse. I don't know why it's following me, and I don't care anymore. All I know is that there is only one way out of this. Tonight, I will end my curse. Tonight, I will end my life. That's the story. Eyes of the Watcher. Another story where someone decides to unalive themselves. It's a common theme so far in all of the stories I've read. I don't think it says who it's written by, this one. But I'll go and look for the translation of the binary code. Here, I have it. One moment. Binary code says, I am the Watcher. You are doomed to me. You cannot hide. You cannot run. I can see you. I can taste you. There is no escape. That's what the binary code says. Fun. Oh, 3 stories so far. And I have a lot more to go through. Extract. So far, I'm having fun with these stories. I've never heard of them before. Only the Alien I've read beforehand, but all of the rest is completely new to me. I'm gonna have a bit more of a drink, because talking gets your voice tired very quickly. The next story is about dementia. Before I start reading this, have you ever heard about the album Everywhere at the End of Time? It's the 6 stages of dementia. Also, it's 6 hours long, so if you have the time, you can go watch it, or listen to it. But it is very long and very emotionally taxing, but it's interesting to listen to. The only 2 things these stories have in common, or well, the music and this story, is that it's about dementia. But I still wanted to mention it anyway. Also, more recently, I found a Zoomer version of Everywhere at the End of Time. It's like Minecraft music or other things combined. It's pretty interesting to see. Alright. Let me open the story of dementia. Yeah. I'll drink some more. Water is good. Water is nice. Alright. I hope there's nothing too bad in this story because I haven't proofread it. Dementia. The light rained on Connor as he stared at the blinking orb. Welcome home, Connor. The orb would always say. Something special about you. We need you. The demonic voice would always jump in. End it all. End it all. It would scream. And the shadow, his shadow, would outstretch its hands and grab him. It's where he'd always wake up. He gasped, the dream still conflicting him, shook his head. The 4 mercenaries isn't what they were called? They were playing an old song. The song was made around 600 years ago? I tried to remember the date. It was June 25, 2493? Yes, that was it. June 25, 2943. I was on board the expedition to the next galaxy. The Red Flower, he called it. Still far from view. The space station was huge and housed more than 50 people. More space than needed, but it didn't matter. Notice now that his head was on the control panel. It was set on autopilot. Thank God. For a second he thought he jump dived them somewhere. He heaved himself up and turned around and noticed Shane lying dead. His eyes stared in horror as he saw a huge gash in Shane's stomach. A knife mark. He grabbed his M25 Jaeger, a pistol, and searched the rest of the ship and saw the other bodies. One of the stomachs had a pregnant woman and was ripped open. Her guts were on the floor next to her. Connor vomited, the stench and sight unbearable. He wiped his chin with his sleeve and got up. He heard something walk up behind him. Turned around, hoping to see a survivor, but instead it was a shadow. Its arms outstretched, it walked towards him. Connor backed up and fired a plasma round, soaking the shadow, but it continued its deadly walk. He faltered as he reloaded, dropping the new clip. He quickly picked it up, but the shadow was right in front of him. Adrenaline pumping, he quickly set the clip in and fell back onto his spine and shot. The round hit the shadow's face, and it fell, hopefully dead, onto the ground. Something stirred his mind. Voices, but not the voices from his dream. His vision blurred as he saw Shane and another person. The woman. "Let's kill the crazy bastard," Shane declared. And then the door behind him opened, and was that a shadow? Connor's vision reverted to normal, but a sick feeling remained in his stomach. He heard crying whispers. It seemed to carry all throughout the halls. Unexplainable crying and whispers. Connor stayed put until he heard them stop and stood back up, shakily. Shadow had been real. It killed his friends and the woman? No. Shadow was only part of a dream, right? Either way, it's dead now, he thought, turning his head to the shadow's body. Or was it? The body was gone. He realized it must have been his imagination, but it seemed so real. He shook his head and continued walking into the snack bay. Blood covered the walls, and the body, whose head wasn't where it should have been, was propped up against the wall. The same knife gash wound in the body. His vision blurred once again. New vision he saw was the man that was propped up against the wall. His face was covered in blood. "Please," he choked. Don't. His vision returned to normal, but he could still hear the scream. He stared at the body, and he blacked out. The dream replayed, except it was different. The orb was still blinking in all its glory. "Connor, I must show you something," it said. The voice echoing throughout the empty darkness that seemed to swirl them. And everything went colorful. It was him, a knife in his hand. The vision with Shane and the woman reverted, except the shadow was replaced by him. It was him. He saw himself slice Shane's stomach and tearing out the woman's guts and her child. He couldn't believe it. His vision returned to the orb. The end is soon. It is inevitable. And then the demonic voice came. "End it all! End it all!" And the shadow placed its hand over his eyes. Shane was hunched over and limping towards the sound of whimpering. He gripped his gash and drew his knife. It was payback time. He went around the corner and saw him. The rat bastard Connor was standing there. "I think you were my friend." Connor seemed to snap out of whatever trance he was in. He turned around. "Wait! Don't!" Shane didn't hesitate, releasing the knife and flew into Connor's forehead. Connor stumbled back a few feet, landed on his back with a satisfying thump. Shane laughed and bucked to his knees. His vision started to swell until all he saw was white. Written by Nedo the Horror. The story to me is kind of confusing. I don't have the brain cells for this. But I still think it's very interesting to read. The whole thing with dementia is that your brain starts to forget more and more things, and the line between reality can often blur. So it is a very real thing. Something very spooky, definitely. Also, I've noticed the music I gave you ran out, so I'll give you a new one. Hold on. Moment. There we go. Let me put on a new song for you. There you go. Now, next story I had lined up. I'm not sure if I want to read this one in full, so maybe I'll keep this one for later, because there is mention of suicide in it and I don't want trouble with the tube beasts. So, for now I'll be moving on to another story. Buried Alive Model. This story is actually suggested by someone called you. It's a short story, but it's very nice. This one is supposedly a Pokemon creepypasta. I don't know much about Pokemon in general, so all of this is new to me. And let's see what the story is about. It's very short, I do remember that. I haven't read it in full, even though it is a short story, but I like keeping it new for myself as well. Buried Alive Model. The Buried Alive Model, often referred to as its code. The Berryman script was to be found on the final story of the Pokemon Tower, in what was now been replaced by the Marowak Coast. According to the scripts assigned to it, the Buried Alive Model was intended to be the boss of the tower. Once reaching the top floor, the following conversation could have taken place. Buried Alive, you're here. I'm trapped. I'm lonely. So very lonely. Won't you join me? After this, the battle would have been initiated. Once in battle view, the Buried Alive Model appears to be a decaying human corpse, attempting to crawl out of the ground. It has been programmed to have two white hands, a Garnak and a Muck. Strangely enough, a protocol for the Buried Alive actions was defeated and were not written. In the case of the player defeating him, the game would freeze. However, a specific ending was written by an unknown programmer upon losing the battle. In this ending, the Buried Alive Model was stated, "Finally, fresh meat," followed by several lines of gibberish. He was to have then dragged the player's character into the ground surrounding him. The scene would finish off with a typical game over. However, in the background, an image of the buried alive character devouring the player was to have been shown. Especially strange protocols after the scene. Wait, let me drink again. Should take a little bit more of a break between stories. Especially strange are the protocols after this scene. The cartridge was to download this image to the small internal memory contained in the Game Boy, overriding this title screen that normally accompanied by the Game Boy turning on. Instead, whenever it was started, the player would view this image as the sound file staticmesh.wav was played. The intended purpose was for this effect, unlike many other factors, leading towards Lavender Town Syndrome is unknown. And that's that story. Very short, but I have heard of Lavender Town. Although it's been a while since I've heard or seen anything of it, but it's also something spooky Pokemon related. It is kind of cool to see that Pokemon, of all things, can also be included into a creepypasta, but I think it's kind of nice. Stir chicken. I do have another Pokemon story next, although this one is a bit longer. So, before I continue reading that one, I'm going to take just a very small break. I'll be leaving you with a campfire and everything. I will be back in just a moment. I saw myself teleport over the screen. Oh no. It seems I was not talking. No! 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 I'm sorry. Let me restate what I just said. Oh no. Okay. Oh, alien scuff. Okay, so what I just said. I was teleporting all over the screen. I'm sorry, I'm used to a vacuum. I'm not used to being down on Earth this much. I'll, I'll go back to my introduction of the story. The next one is also a Pokemon story. And it is suggested by you. It seems you really like Pokemon. I did skim over this story a little bit. And there's one part which made me lose it. You'll probably see which part it was when I get there. I think it's funnier if you read it than if you just hear me say it. But I'll do my best, yeah, either way. There we go. This story is Pokemon's Lost Silver. You see, I am a simple college student living alone in an apartment. I was very enthusiastic about the release of Pokemon. Heart Gold, Lost Silver, here in the States. I have purposefully locked myself out of all media and the internet aside for school purposes. That means no 4chan, no /v, no Pulpedia, etc. I was busy with the school year and being poor at the same time. I wasn't able to buy Soul Silver on its launch date. After my school year ended, I ordered Soul Silver on Amazon. However, it would take a week for it to arrive. I decided that during that time, I would replay my crystal version on my Game Boy Color. However, I realized that long ago, my mom threw it away because I told her the save went dead. And I was upset about it then. She also threw away my silver version. So all I have is my Game Boy Color. As such, I set out to GameStop and bought a used silver version. As it is the only Pokemon game left, they have the GBC. For the GBC. $10. Fairly cheap. I went home and started it up for a nostalgia trip. However, that's when things started getting bizarre, and most likely the reason why you read this. The Game Freak logo started up as normal, but it just froze there. I thought the card was just on error or something, so I turned it off and on. Same thing happened. I tried pressing A, start over, and all of the buttons. Eventually, the logo vanished and there was a black screen for about 5 seconds. Suddenly, rather than going to the usual menu screen, I was already in-game in a previous saved file. Which was odd, as I was expecting all of these cards to have been wiped because of the poor battery. Either way, I wasn't complaining, as I would have chosen the continue option to see what the previous guy did anyways. First off, I checked his trainer information. His name was just Dot. Didn't have much originality. Checked his profile and apparently he had 999.99 hours put into the game. All with 16 badges. 99,100,099.9 Pokédollars. And all 251 Pokemon on the Pokédex. Seeing as he had apparently had Mew and Celebi logged also. I'm guessing he either used a Game Genie or was really hardcore in playing this game. I checked his Pokemon to see what badass team he had. To my surprise, I saw 5 unknowns. And the 6th Pokemon named Hurry, in all caps. I'm thinking that must be some cruel joke by the person who last played this game, but I decided to check the profiles of those Pokemon anyways. As expected, they were different letters of unknown, all level 5. I was a bit shaky with my unknown alphabet at the time, but I identified the word spelled out to be leave, in all caps. As for the 6th Pokemon, it turned out to be a Cyndaquil. Mind you, this is before there were any individualized Pokemon icons. The Cyndaquil looked normal, but it was level 5 with only 1 HP, with 2 attacks left, Veer and Flash. I don't know why they named him Hurry, but at the time I just disregarded it. The most eerie thing was that despite my volume being at max, none of the Pokemon had said their usual cries, just pure silence. Having enough of the team, I closed it. I was parked at what appeared to be a room inside Bellspur Tower. However, for some reason, there were no NPCs around. Even more eerie was that pillar in the middle. Didn't move at all, as if just leaning on its side. There was no music at all, and there was no exit or ladder. At least I thought there wasn't. I walked around for a few minutes, but I can't seem to find a way out. This was certainly not a room I've seen in Bellspur Tower before. I tried checking my items for an escape rope, but the bag was completely empty. There wasn't any wild Pokemon either. Finally, I managed to find the ladder, which turned out to be behind the pillar. The screen turned black and the music finally started playing. I had a sudden chill as I recognized that melody. I heard it to be the theme you hear when you listen to the radio at the elf ruins where the unknown are at. Immediately I realized that it wasn't a loading transition, but rather I was in a dark room and would need flash. Immediately I checked my Pokegear to change it to the radio, something more pleasant. But it turns out that there was no radio card or even a phone, nor time cards. There was only a map card, which in gold, Dots, which is the user's name, from earlier. And we'll call him Gold for now, from now on. I was just walking in a mist of black. I recall that Cyndaquil has Flash, so I turned off my Pokegear and made Cyndaquil use Flash. I didn't see any message saying Harry has used Flash or anything like that. The room became lit just like that, and I soon regretted it. The room was a chilling blood red with a linear grey path heading south. The ladder I used to go up or down was not there at all. I had no choice but to head south. The screen got darker every 20 steps I made until I finally made it to the end, which appeared to be a sign. I read the sign, which said, "Turn back now," in all caps. Suddenly I was asked to answer yes, no. But there was no question asked. I chose yes, as I do not know what it was asking, and the screen went black again, making a louder climb sound. The unknown radio music stopped and in a few seconds was replaced with a not as creepy, Book a flute radio music. Drink. I was in another dark room, but I held my breath and used flash again. Suddenly it said, "Hurry has fainted." Which was odd, since I recall there was no status condition like poison on him, and I clearly wasn't in battle. I checked my Pokemon quickly and suddenly he's no longer in my party. In fact, after a bit of investigating, none of my Pokemon are there, but instead are all replaced with 10 level unknowns. I did the same thing as before. I'm at the part. I did the same thing as before and it spelled out the unknown. My team of unknown spelled "he died" in all caps. Either way, after that creepy change, the room was lit to reveal myself in a very small room. It appears to be only 4 square big. The walls of that room were grey bricks, as if I was inside of something that was hollowed out. Outside that room appears to be a bunch of graves, similar to the ones in Pokemon Red and Blue. I walked around that small room and pressing A for a bit, but nothing happened. I've already concluded that this was clearly a hacked game, and some sadistic fuck sold it to GameStop. However, my curiosity kept me from going. I checked the trainer's profile of Dots again, only to find out that the sprite of Gold was missing in his arms. He also seems to appear less smug, but rather more sad and antsy, in a way I do not know how to describe. But for some reason, it now also said that he had 24 badges, which was clearly impossible. After a few minutes of aimless wandering, my character suddenly spun and did the escape rope spinning animation. Instead of flying up though, my character spun downwards slowly, as if sinking. After that, the music stopped. After finally landing, the overworld sprite of Gold is colored differently now. Instead of the usual red and gold he dons, he appears completely white now, including his skin. What does that mean? It's as if he came straight from the colorless Game Boy games, placed into a colorless background of the Game Boy Color. I checked his profile, and now, while now is as white as the overworld sprite. He lost his legs, and what appears to be bloody tears from his eyes. It also says that he has 32 badges, which now starts to disturb me, as this change of number seems to be representing something important. I also checked my Pokemon, which this time contained 5 unknowns and a level 100 Celebi without a nickname. The unknown are this time leveled 15 and spelled out dying. I checked Celebi's profile. It was a shiny Celebi, except there's only half of the sprite. 1 leg, 1 arm, 1 eye. It has only 1 attack. Banish song. The area I was in itself, the Sprout Tower, with a mobile pillar as before, except everything is now apparently red. I walked north for what felt like forever. Eventually, I finally encountered some generic men and women NPCs. They were all lined up to the side, just facing a long slanted pillar in the middle. They're also white. And nothing happens when I try to speak to them. I kept on going north until eventually the pillar finally appears chopped off with a transparent red in that spot. I went up to red, and without even pressing A, I was suddenly engaged and finally in battle. Music starts again. Sounds like the unknown radio music, played backwards. Gold's battle sprite matches his front, one with the bloody eyes, white skin, lack of arms, while Red's sprite was the same as before in the GCC, except transparent. The text simply said, "Who wants to battle?" As if he has no name. And both of us have only one Pokemon each. Which was weird, since I swore I had 6 with the unknowns. My shiny Celebi came out, conveniently with half a sprite for the back sprite also. The shiny nose and animation was different, as it sounds like it would be multiple screeches and attacks consecutively. Red sent out an unseemingly normal male Pikachu, except he is level 255. And this sprite seems sad. He has tears in his eyes. Rather than the usual fight, item, Pokemon, run menu, I was only given the option to use attacks. Since Celebi has only one, I chose it. Naturally, since Pikachu was level 255, he went first. Pikachu used Curse, lowering his speed and increasing his other stats. I'm not even sure if Pikachu could use Curse. Celebi used Banish Song. In 3 turns, both Pokemons get KO'd. Not like I have a choice. At this point, it didn't even go back to the fight menu, as the battle just continued without me. Also note that there were no animations at all for some reason. Pikachu used Flail, which didn't do much damage despite his level and boost, as his health was well maxed. Celebi used Banish Song. Nothing happens, as it was already used. Pikachu used Frustration, which did a shit ton of damage, knocking Celebi down to less than 10 HP. Celebi used Pain Split, which surprised me as Celebi didn't even have that attack in the first place. Now, Celebi and Pikachu have about 150 HP. Pikachu used Mean Look. Not like that did anything. As expected, due to the effects of Banish Song, my Celebi fainted, except in the text. It said, "Celebi has died." And instead of the ordinary drop-off screen to the animation, the Celebi back sprite just vanished. For some reason, Pikachu was still up even with the Banish Song, and it didn't count as my loss. Pikachu used one more different attack beyond the 5 attack limit. Pikachu used Destiny Bond. Afterwards, it said that Pikachu has died. With a slow... With a slow fade-out animation. Apparently, I was the winner, as a transparent red sprite showed up and said, "Nothing. It's all dots." At that point, I just freaked out, as a transparent red sprite was suddenly beheaded. leaving nothing but his transparent body. The battle then ended at that point, and it faded out along with the music. I'm back in the overworld with another change to Gold Sprite. He's now as transparent as Red's overworld sprite. Oh? Is everything okay? You seem to be zoning out a little bit. Hold on one moment. Don't you zone out on me. Uh-oh. Everything good? Uh-oh. Alright, I'll give you a moment. If you're zoning out a little bit, I'll give you some time. I'll just wait here. Well? Uh-oh. Don't you worry, take your time. It's kind of odd. Oh. Oh, sorry. Oh no. Oh, you're zoning out really badly. Uh-oh. Alright. I'll give you some time. Seems... I don't know. Are you sure you're good to keep going? Oh. Oh, you don't look too good. Uh-oh. Ah. Are we back? Hello? Hello? I'm a little worried. You seem a bit sick. You sure? Everything's okay? Good to keep going? Well, in the meantime, I've gotten my voice a little bit of a rest. So no worries about zoning out, we can just continue. we go. Got me some water. Alright, where did we leave off? Oh. Wait. Uh-oh. Don't zone out on me again. You just got back. Come on. Okay, I think we're good to go. Okay. Transparent as Red's overall sprite, I quickly checked Gold's profile. Ooh, sorry. Where this time, the only thing that remains of him is his head. With a transparent skin. The head was zoomed, and the head was zoomed in a bit, showing a black void in his eyes. It now stated that he had 40 badges. I then backed out and checked my Pokemon. They were all level 20 shiny unknown, which when spelled out read no more. I was at what I now know is... I'm zoning out myself with seeing you. Like zone out completely. I was at what I now know is next to the end. There was apparently no music playing, but for some reason I still felt like something was there that could be heard. I was back in my room in New Bark Town. Maybe, finally, I get to play this game properly, but who am I kidding? I knew that sadistic fuck must have done something. I walked around my room to interact with things, as I'm a bit afraid to go down the stairs to see who was waiting. The note said... I said walked. As while the background was moving, Gold was not moving his transparent limbs at all while doing so. Just floating like those ghosts you see in Diamond Pearl. As expected, the radio, computer and TV did not work, so I had no choice but to go down the stairs. I ended up in the same in the same lower level room of my house. Everything appears normal, except my mom isn't home. After failing to interact with anything in this room, I decided to go outside. To my surprise, that door leading outside to the south didn't work. And instead, I just walked straight through the void. I continued moving south to see what the fuck was going on. My house vanishes as I head south into the void. It was creepy. When I entered the void, the outline of Gold's transparent sprite turned white to contrast with the pitch blackness. Eventually, I reached a white area, and Gold's sprite turned black and transparent again. I continued south without thinking of stopping at all. After a long trek south, I finally encountered something. It was Gold's regular sprite. I talked to it. He said goodbye forever. Notably with a space in between the forever and then vanished. As that happened, it said question mark, question mark, question mark, used nightmare. Which at that point I would not deny that being possible. Gold did another escape room jump animation, spinning downwards slowly like he did before. Now I'm back into that small hollowed out room, surrounded by graves earlier. Or at least, I say I was back there, as there is no sprite anymore. I tried to walk around, but nothing moved. Not even a bumping noise. I checked my trainer profile with absolutely no gold sprite left. It said I have 0 badges, and all the pictures of Jonto's gym leaders at the bottom were replaced with skulls. I checked my Pokemon, which were all level 25. Oh? Don't you zone out again, I'm having my eyes on you. Don't. Hello? I fear that we may have to leave this talking session if you keep zoning out like this. Hold on. Moment. Hello? Okay, we're back. Alright, if you didn't hear me beforehand, because I know you're zoning out a little bit, we might have to leave soon. It is getting kind of late. It is already dark, but if you're zoning out this much, I think after this story we may call it quits. Also, we're just at the part which made me laugh when I skimmed through it. I checked my Pokemon, which were all level 25 unknown. As expected, it spelled out a phrase that declared that I dared to read. I'm dead. In all caps. I don't know. The reason why it made me laugh is if you've seen Needy Streamer Overload, one of the emotes you use to reply to the girl is an emote with I'm dead. It just popped in my head when I was reading this. Oh, that big stretch. This is a long story. As soon as I went back to the overworld, the room I supposedly was in was then covered with the same blocks as in the walls. I then figured out exactly what that room was, with the final text saying "Rest in peace," or RIP in short. That room was a big grave surrounded by other graves. Gold had already been dead. He died, presumably after a few years after he defeated Red. He was a young trainer who, despite his efforts in collecting so many badges and attempts at becoming a Pokemon master, was still unable to avoid the inevitable fate of death, and his efforts were eventually forgotten by the next generation. I was unable to escape from that text no matter what I pressed. I tried resetting the game, and the same thing happened, at which I then finally decided to give up on that horrible nightmare. After that experience, I will never look at the gimmick Unknown the same way again. They say that only the first generation have folk tales and legends, but the second generation has shown me how unpleasant the truth can be. Eventually, I enjoyed Soul Silver immensely, but I still can't unthink what that rigged game has told me. Ooh, big story. We're at the end of it. I have bigger stories, but seeing as to how taxing this one is on my throat, and apparently on you because you're zoning out, I think we might leave it here. Although, I can... You know what? Before I go, I want to mention a few things I wanted to read but probably couldn't. Because they seem interesting from what I've skimmed through so far. So if you find creepypasta interesting, which I assume you do, otherwise you wouldn't be here, I'll suggest a few things. Right. This one, which is a very long one, is called The Brooding Star. I'm not sure what it is about. It is a very long story, but it might be good to read. If I were to read this one, I think it has multiple chapters, so I could just read this one for one whole thing. I think it would take hours to read this one. So I decided, you know, it's already been a little while. My voice is tired. The other one is Red Moon. Another space and alien related one. Because, I mean, I am an alien. I like space. Kind of obvious that I would pick this one. Let me see. Yeah, those are pretty much all of the stories aside from The Woman in Blue, which I wasn't sure if I would read either way. But I'm debating. Let me open the Red Moon story. Just want to quickly have a look, see how long it is. Oh. Hello. Wait. Oh, okay. It's not too long, but I think it's a bit on the longer side, so I'll leave things here. I hope so far you've been able to enjoy some of the stories I've had to tell, and maybe we could do this another time, because I still have way more stories I would love to tell, and maybe I can find some in the future. And let's hope you don't zone out too much next time, because I will smack you. If I catch you zoning out, I have a hand. It's not showing, because I have my book in my hand, but I will smack you. Alright. I may see you again another time. This has been really fun for me, and hopefully see each other again. Bye!